Hey there! The pivot table is an awesome tool that lets you easily summarize and discover patterns in your data on Google Sheets, all without the need for complex formulas. Today, we're going to dive into creating and using a pivot table report within a Google Sheets spreadsheet. To help us understand the process better, I'll walk you through the steps using my solar product sales spreadsheet as an example. Let's get started. When you take a look at the sheet, you'll see that I've neatly organized the data into columns. It's highly recommended to organize your data in this manner when working with pivot tables. The reason being that the column headers will serve as the fields you can add to your pivot table report. The good news is, you don't even have to manually select a range of cells to include in your pivot table. Google Sheets is clever enough to automatically detect a suitable range for your pivot table. And if you ever need to make adjustments to the data range, you can easily do so at any time. First, click on the Data menu. Then, choose Pivot Table from the options. You can either create the pivot table on a new sheet in your spreadsheet or add it to the existing sheet. For now, let's go with the new sheet option. Simply select that and click on Create. This action will open a fresh sheet in your spreadsheet, specifically named Pivot Table 1. Also, on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll find the Pivot Table Editor tool at your disposal. On the sheet you're currently viewing, you'll notice an empty pivot table report specifically designed for your spreadsheet. If you wish, you can give it a new name by renaming the tab. In my case, I'll name it Sales Pivot Table for clarity. To access the Pivot Table Editor, simply click on the table once more, and it will appear on the right-hand side of your screen. Within the editor, I want the Date column to be displayed in the Rows section. To achieve this, I'll click on Add next to the rows and select the Date column from the available options. To display the item type in the Columns section, I'll click on the Add button next to Columns and select the Item Type option. For the values, I want to include the Amount column. So, I'll click on the Add button next to Values and choose the Amount column from the list. For now, I won't add a filter. Let's take a look at the current setup. The pivot table will automatically calculate the sum of each row and column and present a grand total. With the pivot table set up, it's now effortless to analyze the sales data. I can quickly observe the number of charges, light bulbs, and panels sold for each specific date within the month of March. Additionally, the pivot table conveniently displays the total number of items sold on each date through the Grand Total section. Furthermore, along the bottom, I can find the cumulative totals for each item type sold throughout the entire month of March. And to top it off, in the bottom right corner of the pivot table, there's the grand total of all items sold in the month of March. To modify the arrangement of data in the pivot table, you have the flexibility to drag and drop fields into different categories. In this case, let's make the Date column appear in the Columns section, while the item type is listed in the Rows section. To remove a field from the pivot table, simply click the X located in the top right corner of the field. Let's remove the Amount field. Instead, we'll replace it with the Price field to provide valuable information. Furthermore, let's adjust how the Price field is summarized. We'll change it to calculate the average price. This modification will allow us to view the average price for each item and also the average price by date. Moreover, we can incorporate a filter into the pivot table. To do so, locate the Filters section at the bottom of the pivot table editor. Click on Add, and specify the filter based on the Date column. To narrow down the data in the pivot table, let's select only the dates within the first week of March 2020. You can achieve this by unchecking any dates that occur after March 7th. After making the appropriate adjustments, click on OK. As a result, the pivot table will now display data exclusively for the first week of March 2020. It's crucial to grasp a couple of key points about pivot tables. One significant aspect is that the cell values within the pivot table are not editable. Even if you attempt to type on your keyboard, you won't be able to modify these cells as they are not designed for direct editing. You know what's really cool? You can actually create multiple pivot table reports from the same set of data. It's super easy. All you have to do is go back to your data source, select Data Pivot Table again, and voila! A brand new pivot table report will be created on a separate sheet. The best part? It won't overwrite any of the previously created pivot tables. So you can keep exploring and analyzing your data without any worries. Oh, and here's another awesome thing. If you're using Microsoft Excel, you can upload your pivot tables to Google Sheets and convert them without any hassle. And vice versa. If you're working with Google Sheets, you can download your pivot tables and convert them to Microsoft Excel format. It's all about making your life easier and more flexible. We're going to dive into creating those amazing, user-friendly slicers for your pivot tables while building an interactive dashboard. Believe me, it's a game changer. So, when it comes to crafting a seamless interactive dashboard in Google Sheets, the key ingredients are pivot tables, slicers, and charts. And in this lesson, we'll learn how to bring them all together into one cohesive dashboard. Let's kick off this lesson by creating our first pivot table, which will find its place in the dashboard section down below. Picture it as the front page or initial worksheet of your Google Sheet, adorned with beautiful charts and visualizations. Now, this dataset we have here is the one we want to transform into a pivot table. To do that, we'll select all the data and navigate to the Insert tab. From there, we'll click on Pivot Table and choose the option for placing it in an existing sheet. In our case, we'll select an empty space within the dashboard section. Once we click OK, the pivot table will be created, and you'll see a basic version of it right here. Now, moving on to step 2, we'll make some edits to our pivot table to display the count of people in different occupations. To achieve this, we'll place the occupations in the rows section, like so. As for the values, we'll use the age column because we simply want a straightforward count of people. To make it more descriptive, we can rename the column to something like number of people. This way, we'll obtain a comprehensive breakdown of how many individuals work in each occupation. It's a great way to visualize the distribution of workers across various professions. In step 3, we'll proceed by copying and pasting the pivot table into the dashboard section once again. To do this, you'll select the pivot table data just as you would in Excel. Then, move your cursor slightly to the right within the dashboard section and perform the paste operation. The objective now is to find the average hours worked by marital status. To achieve this, we'll make a few adjustments. Firstly, we'll remove the occupation field from the pivot table rows. Then, we'll replace it with the marital status field. Next, instead of calculating the count of people, we'll modify the values field. By removing the current calculation, we can choose to calculate the average hours worked. Simply click on Average to select this option. This way, we'll obtain the average number of hours worked based on marital status. So, let's go ahead and rename this column to Average Hours Worked. And for this dataset, I'll just make it more visually appealing by removing some decimal places. Now you can easily see, based on marital status, what the average number of hours worked is for each marital status. Great! Now, we have 2 pivot tables set up. Here's a little task for you. try filtering the pivot tables by gender and race. You can do this by using the filter section in the pivot table settings. Let's take a look at this pivot table here, which displays the average number of people or the number of people based on their occupation. Now, if you want to filter this table to focus on a specific gender, here's what you need to do. First, click on the Add button, then select Gender. Next, you can choose to show only females. And if you want to further refine the data, you can even add another filter for race within the gender filter. And if you want to specifically select Asian Pacific Islander, simply hit OK, and you'll notice that the pivot table accurately filters the data. However, envision this dashboard being used by our teammates, management, and other colleagues. It becomes quite cumbersome to manually navigate the pivot table and individually select these specific elements. We aim to enhance user-friendliness and create a more streamlined experience for our team. This is all about incorporating user-friendly slicers for our pivot tables. Let's begin by removing the existing filters. Close the current pivot table, and then click on the Data tab. Next, we'll add a slicer for better filtering options. In Step 5, we'll create slicers for gender and race. So, go ahead and click on Data, then select Add a Slicer. Now, let's start by selecting the desired field. For instance, I'll choose Gender. Actually, let's rearrange the steps. I'll cancel that for now. Let's go back to Lesson 6 and proceed with the correct steps. First, click on the Data tab. Then, select Add a Slicer. Now you'll notice that the data is properly selected. Let me cut this part. Now, let's delete this slicer for the time being. We should actually go back to Lesson 8 to perform the slicer addition. So, let's navigate to Lesson 8 and click on Data. Choose Add a Slicer. Oh, I see that I need to select the data first using this method. So, let's go back to Lesson 6 and make sure we select the data there. Click OK, and now you can observe that you have the option to choose a column in your slicer. For now, I'll select Gender. What's really impressive about slicers is that you can customize their appearance. By clicking on Customize, you can modify various aspects. For instance, you can choose a background color like this Google Sheets blue. Let's increase the font size, make it bold, and then let's make a copy of this slicer. We'll place it here, and this one will be used for race. So, select the data column as race for this slicer. Now, if I attempt to use these slicers, I can effortlessly filter both pivot tables. For example, if I want to filter for females only, it's really cool because it filters both of these pivot tables simultaneously. It's important to note that slicers automatically filter for everything on the same Google Sheet, on the same sheet. These slicers can connect not only to pivot tables, but also to various visualizations such as charts. They automatically synchronize with all the data, including pivot tables and other visualizations present on your dashboard. For instance, if I want to show only Asian Pacific Islanders for the race category, I can simply select that option from the drop-down slicer. Indeed, these slicers provide a much more user-friendly experience compared to manually navigating the filter options within the pivot table. Let's go ahead and undo these filters for now. Now, we'll move on to Step 6, which involves creating a bar chart to display the average age by work type. Additionally, we'll create a scorecard chart that showcases the average age for all individuals. Let's take it step by step. First, we'll create a bar chart to display the average age by work type. To do this, navigate to your dashboard and click on the drop-down menu. Then, go to Insert and select Chart. Choose the Basic Column Chart option. You can move the chart to a suitable location on your dashboard. Now, for the data range, select everything from Lesson 6 that we had used for the pivot table and slicers, which should be from B12 to K911. Click OK. Initially, the chart might look a bit overwhelming, but we specifically want to focus on examining the average age by work type. To refine the chart and focus on the average age, follow these steps. First, click on Edit Chart located below the chart on your dashboard. If there are any unwanted series displayed, remove them for now. The objective is to show the average age. If necessary, let's start from scratch. Let's go back and remove the label. Now, we'll focus on displaying the average age. For the x-axis, we want to show the work type. However, you might notice that currently, it shows every single work type individually. To address this, click on Aggregate. This will allow us to display the total age, which represents the average age by work type. To further enhance the chart, we need to modify it by changing the aggregation to an average. By doing this, we'll be able to visualize the average number of hours worked based on the work type, such as self-employed, private, etc. Moreover, you have the option to make the chart more visually appealing. You can customize it by selecting different colors, for example. Additionally, if you want to display the actual data points on the chart, you can click on Add Data Points to include them. You can also customize the position of the chart to be in the center if you prefer. Furthermore, you have the option to change the number format of the source data. For instance, you can select a custom format, such as 0, to make the average number of hours for specific work types more distinct on the bar chart. While we can leave the formatting aside for now, the key point to highlight is that by placing this chart on the dashboard, you'll notice that the chart dynamically updates based on the selections made using the slicers. For example, by selecting Clear All or Asia Pacific Islander on the slicers, the chart will reflect those changes accordingly. So there are a few data points that are missing, which is why you don't see the work type displayed. But what's really cool is that all the slicers on this dashboard automatically update and filter the data based on what I click on. It's a really useful feature that allows me to show specific data to my teammates and management that is relevant to their needs. Now, let's talk about the final visualization I want to create, which is the scorecard. It's a really cool type of visualization that I often include in my dashboards. So, if I navigate to the Insert Chart option and move it down here, I'll make it a bit smaller. I'll also collapse this section a bit. Now, if I go back to this point, I can click on Edit Chart and make some changes. I'll scroll down and look for the Total Scorecard Chart option. Once I find it, I'll click on the data range associated with it. I'll select the same data range from less than 6 hit, and now I want to display the average age for all the people in my data center. To do that, I can remove the baseline value and these extra elements. I don't need them at the moment. I know it looks like a lot, but I don't really want to show all of this. I'll focus on the average age. I think I need to click on this aggregate option, and I can leave it as it is here. I believe this will automatically update as I click on the drop-downs in my dashboard. So, if I want to click on it again, I'll clear this selection and show only the Asian Pacific Islander hit. Okay, now it displays the average age for Asian Pacific Islanders within my entire dataset. Moving further down, I can clear this to show only males, and the chart will update accordingly. Of course, you can always edit this chart to add specific titles. For example, the title could be Average Age of People. The scorecard is a fantastic visualization that I like to use to highlight key statistics or metrics that are important for both my team members and the management team. Now, in step 7, we can actually customize the appearance of our dashboard. Not only can we edit the look and feel of our slicers, but we can also change the overall look of the entire dashboard by accessing the Format Theme option. If you click on the drop-down menu here and navigate to Format and then Theme, you'll see this neat feature in the right-hand panel. Let's say you want all your charts, dashboards, and slicers to have a consistent appearance. Well, you can simply click on different themes, and it will give your dashboard a completely different look and feel. What's great about these themes is that they have a more modern look compared to Excel. So, if you want to add some variety or use different colors for your dashboard, this feature is really handy. So, as we wrap up this final video, we want to leave you with a message. Keep spreading positivity, chasing your dreams, and embracing the beauty of life. Together, we can make the world a better place. See you in another video. Love and peace.